Hello, my chess friends. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky reporting from the US Championship. Well, I'm not actually there. Just like all of you, I'm sitting there in the safety of my home, you taking advantage of modern communication methods, watching the games online, commenting online, and now recording the game of the day for you. Round one today. I apologize to those who expected to see the video posted tonight. It's just not possible. We just can't make it work. But it should be up fairly early tomorrow morning when the US audience wakes up and, well, hopefully have breakfast before logging back on ICC. Well, if you skip breakfast, well, welcome anyway. It's going to be up there. Game of the day coverage. We are happy to provide that, and I guess I'll be doing this, well, pretty much every day. But today I was broadcasting together with my esteemed colleague Grandmaster Ronan Hardzvi, and what we witnessed was, well, pretty much what we expected to see. The rating favorites, Kamksy and Nakamura, well, they looked very good today. They played very convincing chess, and they defeated respectfully. Kamksy beat Alejandro Ramirez, and Nakamura beat Robert Hest. Well, the favorites, they both had the white pieces, so that certainly helped. Well, maybe a little bit of jitters, stage fright. Expectations are great for the new generation of American players, finally to make a push and challenge the established order. Well, the pecking order is hardly changed in the past 2 years. We have Nakamura, who although did not win the US Championship when he played 2 years ago, and he skipped last year, but he's still unquestionably number one, but closely followed by Kamksy, who's now two-time defending champion. That hasn't happened in a very long time. And followed by, I guess, by Alexander Onishchuk, who took some time off. Congratulations to Alex for a big addition to his family, twin boys. Well, Mr. Mom now is back in business playing chess, so good luck to Alexander. Well, in this tournament, it's a 12-player round-robin field. No more experimenting with double-stage, multi-stage tournament systems. I think it's a welcome change. I don't want to belittle accomplishments of Gada Kamksy, but well, he won the last two championships and went down the wire. But well, I think this match format that was used at that time, he had the most experience with. Here it's just straight up 11-round tournament, so you're probably gonna have to win a lot of games, and he did just that. Got off a good start. Another remarkable game today was a very good win by Kamksy Akobian against Yasser Seirawan. Yasser played his favorite opening, one of his favorite lines, but he never got the game off the ground. He was under pressure from the opening on, and Varush very skillfully maintained the pressure and put the game away in the endgame. Well, I have my sentimental feelings toward two of the participants in this tournament, and that's Seirawan and Kaidanov, who both my former teammates in the US Olympic team and the representatives of the dying generation of the 1990s. I sort of count myself in. Well, can they do it? Kaidanov, amazingly, for all these years, since 92, for 20 years, one of the best players in the country, no US Championship titles. He's probably the strongest player in recent memory who never won the US Championship. Can he do it now? Well, I'm sure he's gonna give his best. He had an interesting up and down game today against Yuri Shulman. At some moment it seemed to me Kaidanov was about to take over. He had block, but some crafty play by Shulman and taking advantage of Kaidanov's weak king, and that actually put Kaidanov on the defensive. But he held on. There wasn't enough material for Shulman to push for a win. So, and I can't go on. I can't get to the to game of the day before I report on a tragic loss, terrible blunder oversight on the part of Alexander Stripunsky, losing the game with white and 10 moves to Anishuk. No, well, Alex Anishuk will take it, of course. It's not his fault, but with Stripunsky, well, I hope he doesn't take it too hard. He's an experienced player, and we want him back in the tournament. Anyway, yeah. So, I guess we can go on now, because one game I didn't mention was the game between Alex Lenderman and Ray Robson. Well, these guys, they also have high hopes, together with Hess and Ramirez. Well, they're about to make a big push. They are not happy with the status quo. They're not going to sit there and let Nakamura, Kamksy, Anishuk, and others take the spots on the Olympic team. They want to break in, and that's the chance for them. Robson is the younger one of the two, and he already accomplished a lot, but well, we expect even more. Lenderman is somewhat less known, but he's been a force in our various open tournaments in the past 4 years, and he also traveled and successfully played in Europe. Okay, so I guess we have to move on to the game. Okay, Lenderman is white, and he opens the game with d4. Now, Robson used to play the Slav, but he works so hard on his openings. I believe he can prepare a new opening to every tournament. But this is not new, he already played the Grunfeld. So off they go. Well, there are many lines that white can try, but Lenderman chooses for this the so-called Russian system. Alright, the pressure pretty much forces black to surrender the center. There's nothing new about that. When you play the Grunfeld, you don't expect to maintain your pawn in the center. The difference in this position, compared with usual Grunfeld lines, is that knight on f6, which is, no, well, in the way of the bishop. So black usually gets rid of this knight, maybe moves it away to b6. Here it's different. e4. Now, of course, the move knight fd7, known as the Smyslov system, just for that purpose, knight to b6 and open up the bishop, attack the center. Well, lots of theory everywhere, but Robson chooses what is known as the Hungarian variation. I have a little bit of a beef with that, because as a group of Hungarian players headed by Andras Adorian studied this line in the late 1970s, early 1980s. It was done parallel to our work, and I lived in Leningrad, in the city where I was born and raised. And together with some other players, we also looked at all that, and at the move a6, and I played quite a few games against the likes of Boris Gulko and some others, some Battle Puchian early in the 1980s. Well, we came up with some interesting ideas. You know, it's well, great minds. You know, they think alike. But I guess now the name of the variation stays there. Okay, I was just joking. So the Hungarian variation. What's the idea? No, well, the idea is to push b5. Push b5 and unroll the pawns, unroll the queen side. Hopefully pushing also the white queen away, so then you can follow through with c5. Well, white has a choice of moves here, but I would say right away that anybody who thinks of a4 is going to be disappointed. b5 is possible anyway. Your rook on a1 is not protected. So when the queen gets under attack, after the exchange on b5, white will lose the game. Alright, so, well, yeah, bishop e2, queen b3. During the broadcast I was talking about queen b3. So the idea was that in white to move b5, which sometimes white takes advantage of. But bishop e2 also. Then Black plays c5. And here the main move used to be bishop b7 as I played against Gulko years ago. But then white found ways of maintaining some advantage. And lately it's more like bishop e6. Just in the recent Russian team championship, there were 2 games in 1 round that followed the same line. Morozevich's game and Caruana, Svidler. I don't remember who played who. But anyway, it's really, really topical. But there is the third move, e5, which I always considered the strongest. Well, the black knight gets pushed back at the moment when it cannot come to d5. Those of you who think that bishop e6 would be a clever move, to chase the queen away and then play knight d5, shouldn't forget about this exchange operation. That should probably give white some advantage. We've seen this kind of position in somewhat various interpretations, different lines of the Grunfeld. White, I believe, always is somewhat on top in such situations. The pieces are stronger than the queen. Alright, so b5 now. I did not used to play this move. I used to play knight d7. Basically with the idea of playing knight b6 with the tempo on the queen at the right moment. And I had some exciting games that saw this line. And then knight g5. Well, black does best by ignoring the threat of knight f7. He's gonna give the exchange and he plays this move. In case you're curious about this, there is this nasty reply queen d5 that messes things up if you're looking from black's side. Your knight on e5 is still under attack, and you certainly don't want that to happen when c7 is hanging. Yeah, so I used to play knight d7, but e6 is probably not the best. The best move here is bishop e3, and when black tries to execute his idea with knight b6, white has the very annoying move knight c5, and the queen is surprisingly well positioned there. It's ahead of the rest of the army. Okay, there's the pawn on e5, but it can be trapped, and it's even hard to attack it. White's better here. Well, should black play b5 at that moment, then white also can use the d5 square. That's very effective. Now the queen somehow circles around, and on her way to h4 to support bishop h6. Oh, pretty good for white. So b5 was played at that moment. Queen b3. Now knight d7. No, via various transpositions, this position has been reached many times in the top grandmaster games. Obviously, the main supporter of this was no one else but Peter Svidler, the modern chess #1 authority on all matters Grunfeld. And but he had a rough time too, dealing with e6. e6 is pretty interesting line, but well, there is a lot of theory there. I'm sure Robson done his homework. That he's not the kind of man to come to the game unprepared. He always is well prepared. Well, probably Lenderman had that in mind, because he played that move, bishop e2, as a very sneaky move. It seems like that white is changing pace on every move. e5 was super energetic, and now he just plays modest developing move. But black needs to decide what to do. And Robson here played c5. We'll see. But the alternative, which has been tried, of course, was to play knight b6. Now, trying to establish control over the white squares. Well, that's a decent idea. Well, main game I saw in this line was played between Vasily Ivanchuk as white and Mikhail Krasenkov of Poland. So black wasn't able to play c5, but he at least got his pieces out. And after bishop e3, he went on with knight b4 and then bishop c4. No, well, both sides have deficiencies in their pawn structure. The backward c7 pawn, the backward d4 pawn. No, the game was eventually drawn. It was a rapid game. Played recently this year. Interesting. But somehow Robson, I'm not quite sure how much he knew about this line, bishop e2. It seemed like he was somewhat caught unawares of what's going on there. So he played c5. Now, surprisingly, e6 comes right at this moment. So what's the idea, you might ask? How come bishop e2 is so useful? Bishop e2 is somewhat useful, but the main thing is that black played c5 too soon for this particular line. So if this happens, and this is actually Morozevich-Svidler from last year's Russian championship. Svidler, of course, won the tournament, and he was ahead of the field, coming to the last round already with first place secured. And he played Morozevich and he lost. And this is exactly how the game went. He didn't like knight takes c5 here. Queen retreats to e3. And now it's somewhat awkward for black. He has this isolated pawn on e7, and somehow the knight on c5 is not convincing now. There was a game won by Irina Krush, by the way, another player who's always on top of opening innovations. No, Svidler chose a different path. He went knight e5. Once again, that move queen d5. I don't know if he really anticipated that. And then, somewhat depressingly, we went into this position where Peter pretty much had no choice but to play a temporary piece sacrifice. No, the two pieces under attack. But after knight takes b5, I mean, he's down a pawn. He has some lead in development, as it often happens in the Grunfeld, but White's chances are obviously superior with the bishop pair and a strong passed pawn on c5. So Morozevich won this game practically without a fight. So the ball is in black's court. He needs to figure out what to do here. One of the players who tried that was Dominguez in Cuba. So he played in this position c4. But his opponent, the Vietnamese star Le Quang Liem, retreated with the queen to d1, which is probably the right square to go to. And somewhat surprisingly, started action on the queen side. Black is poorly coordinated. He is playing the Grunfeld style, the Grunfeld fashion, but somehow the move c5, c4 falls out of this concept. This is not a Slav. You need to eliminate the center. No, but this position I don't really like that much for black. Like Wang, won a nice game. So Robson had his hands full and he was taking a lot of time. Finally he came up with excuse me, I'll be coughing, sneezing and hacking all the time, and you're gonna hear me every day, so bear with me. I hope the marvels of modern pharmaceutical industry will keep me afloat for the duration of this month. Lots of things to cover. Anyway, the took there, but the problem is that after he takes f7, he obviously couldn't take. If he takes, then knight g5. So he had to go king h8. And now white took that central square with the knight. And I would say that looking at this position, it's clear to me that white has to be better. It's difficult to eliminate the f7 pawn, and white's very comfortable on the light squares. But the main problem is that white is not going to sit there idly. He's gonna push this h pawn forward. The black king is really unsafe. Robson spent a lot of time. Finally, he played this. H4. No, that's human decision. You can, for sure, you can sit there and debate what happens if white plays, say, F4 and knight G5. But F4 just looks ugly. It's logical to try to get to the king. Plus, here, Lenderman came up with some interesting tactics. He just totally ignored the knight. Well, the knight was taken, and then came this move. Amazing concept. Ronan Harzvi was very happy with that. So he showed us the following line. Check. No, well, doesn't matter if you take or go back. Queen G6. Finishes. No, this line well illustrates the dangers. Of course, Robson found himself in a critical situation already. Under the circumstances, he played the best moves. Went back. Now comes G4. Knight D7 takes. No, black doesn't even have a chance to play this move because white would take. He doesn't need the queen for this checkmate on H7. So there was no other choice but to recapture on F5. We expected this position to be totally lost for black, and we were looking for putaways. Bishop H6 we liked, Bishop G7 the only move. And here's the line that Ronan and I worked out during the broadcast. We wanted to play Queen E6, with the idea then of this rook check. Now the king is pushed back, it cannot come forward as it did in the game. And now we thought white can win a piece. No, of course, you know us, we only look at the check. Then indeed white is winning. King D3. Too many threats there. Too many threats. Black cannot play this. Well, the problem is, however, that Queen G1 is too soon. That's the good one. Well, the idea is to just chase the white queen and keep Queen G1 check in reserve. To play it only when the white queen no longer attacks the black rook. Oh, but I'm not sure if it's possible or not. Anyway, so we weren't sure about this line. But actually we were sure, but now I'm not sure anymore. So, who knows? Well, we criticized Lenderman's decision to give this check because of King f6. Maybe somehow, well, I've seen things like this in the group. Maybe this whole line somehow holds by miracle, but it does. Actually, here in this position, black could probably even entertain the outrageous idea of playing e5. It just refuses to get mated. Well, white's probably better here. He needs to castle long. And then he can try to blast it open. Like some approximate line like this. Well, on paper, black is fine because the knight and 2 pawns, but the king is permanently unsafe, and I think the white rooks will find things to do here. Like black will play d3. Well, the pawn is also pretty strong. So that was possible. I think the Robson's problem in this game was that he, when he was hit by this novelty, or at least what was new for him, he spent too much time and energy, and it really cost him at critical moments of the game. I know it's very hard to go for all this stuff without preparation, because it seemed like that black is just sidestepping, just dodging bullets on every move, but somehow even in analysis I couldn't find put away. But anyway, this happened. Well, there is some logic to it, to get the queens off, but this is the kind of decision you take when you're really low on time and you simply realize you cannot play the middle game. White is better. White is the one with the chances. Well, knight and 2 pawns and the rooks are present. That helps black, I assume. But h6 is a very nice move. With that, Lenderman creates a possibility of playing rook g7 always at the right moment. And that is very, very important. So he came back with the knight, and now the other rook infiltrates, and pretty much it's just planning to come around and attack the a6 pawn. It's hard for black to untangle here. It's a little bit clumsy with the rook on f7. Well, Robson, who had no time, decided that he had to eliminate the h6 pawn. It gave white time to do things on the other side. Now check, king h3. The rook came back to e7. Well, white is going to win the b pawn, but I like the way Lenderman handled this. As rook e2 is a very good move. Protecting the second. He knows that black cannot possibly save the b pawn, because his own rook is tied up to protection of the e6 pawn. Knight g4. We didn't like this move when it was played, and I still don't like it. I believe that the right way to play would be to play knight f7. Well, say after rook b6, same thing. The knight comes to g5, somewhat quicker, and now the rook can be activated. f4 is never a problem because of knight e4. Actually, white should not play f4. I had similar endgames in my practice, and I'd say this: when decide with the exchange, with two rooks there, if you have a passed pawn, you should try to move it forward only using your rooks. Don't treat this like a rook endgame and try to activate your king. The opponent has the pawns and the knight and the rook. It's just gonna cause you a lot of grief, and you end up probably walking into some square or fork. The best strategy to treat it like sometimes we treat queen endgames. Keep your king safe, away from all the streaks, and try just to promote the pawn. The two rooks are good enough, slowly but surely, to push the pawn forward. So that's what I was thinking. Do it this way. Now black probably needs to push his e pawn forward, but for a moment I'm not quite sure about the move e5 on account of that check. Maybe I don't want that. Obviously my analysis is incomplete. I thought, can black afford this move to protect the 6? And now just one line that I looked at. Now there, e4. Now the other rook behind. Knight f3 and forward. And king f5 and forward. So this is the method. That's what white is going to do. But he has to worry about the king. I believe he can handle this situation. He should go there. And on the check, just back. Now if black tries to set up rook h4, rook g4, perpetual checks, then the rook protects from the other side. Now this is, this is picturesque. Look how white is using his rooks defensively. That rook protects there, and that on the h file. The king is safe on h1. In the meantime, the pawn is going forward. Black's inability to get the knight involved in that fight against the a pawn is the major problem in this position. I would say if I move the white pawn to c3, then I don't think that white has any winning chances. I actually even thought in this position it would rather somehow would be a draw. But Robson, he tried. He played a lot of knight moves, but they didn't give him much. No, finally he figured it's time to move the h-pawn forward. But rook b4. Very primitive strategy, but it's just something that we already know that it works. I would like to return back, because there is an idea here. Let me return back. I'm thinking then in this situation, just occurred to me now. Yeah, this is what it was. After rook e2. Knight f7. I still believe that knight f7 was the way to go. And knight check. No, forget about the h pawn. I think probably the f pawn has to move. Well, it chases that rook back. And then I guess rook a7 or something to this effect. Maybe that would give better counter chances. Okay, never mind. It was just a passing thought. So I know what Robson did is not convincing. Hopping around with the knight didn't do him any good, but it was real hard to find anything. Finally he activates, but this is already desperation, because black now makes a commitment to finding a perpetual check at least, because he's not even trying to stop the a-pawn anymore. No, good calculation from Lenderman, and there was just nothing for black. So here Ray realized that he's going to have to give up that rook for a pawn. He did his best, driving the white king somewhat away from the king's side, but too little, too late. Two rooks. Well, the problem with this is that white always wants to sacrifice the exchange and take one of the pawns. Say you play here, okay, well, it's just a game over. The white king is too close. So in playing on the increment alone, which I guess was the case throughout this game for poor Robson, he played this, but then he ended up pretty much in Zugzwang. Played knight f5, but that walked into this mate. But there was simply nothing to do. So now if the king goes forward, then of course rook takes h5. Well, I selected this game even though I thought that Lenderman misplayed his attack. Now I realized that he didn't misplay anything, and maybe he just played absolutely a perfect game. So despite convincing victories by Kamksy and Nakamura, the honor for the first game of the day winner goes to Alexander Lenderman. And, well, thank you to both players for providing us with the exciting game. Okay, with that, I guess I'll bid you good night. Although you'll be, if you're in the United States, you'll be listening to this in the morning. All right, guys. Our broadcasts begin daily from 2 o'clock ICC time. Make sure you're there for the exciting games from the US Championship in St. Louis, Missouri. This is Grandmaster Alex Yermolinsky. Till next time.